What up, YouTube? Episode 126 coming at you. We are on our second week of The Wisdom of the Bullfrog by Admiral William H. McRaven. Great book, Leadership Made Simple But Not Easy. I just want you to know that it's a simple book to read, small chapters, but if we don't do anything about it, if we don't do anything with the things that we learn, then it's not even worth reading. So, flying solo tonight. Just got back from the lake, and it was a good weekend. So, we are going to get started. Tonight we're hitting up chapter 3 through 6. Get ready. If you want to pass this podcast along, please do so. It helps us out a lot. So get ready. I'll be looking at you guys, challenging you guys, and then I will be looking at my notes. So you too, get ready. Here we go. All right, check. Check, 1, 2, check. Cannot hear myself. Check, 1, 2, there we go. All right, check. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Made for More Consulting podcast. Mario here. This is episode 126 of our podcast, and we are a podcast committed to helping us grow individually so that in turn we can lead those around us better, and we pass on what we learn. As leaders, we cannot pass on what we don't possess. So make sure that we continue to grow with self-development so that, again, the people around us will grow as well. Tonight, I'm flying solo. You can go to YouTube, check out our channel, just hanging out. Just got back from the lake. It was a good weekend. So tonight, we're wrapping up a great week. We are about 2 weeks out from what we call the gathering. For those of you following the gathering, we are about to launch our first mid-month debrief. So we're 2 weeks out, so we're going to launch a debrief, so be on the lookout for that. But today we're discussing chapters 3 through 6 of our book, The Wisdom of the Bullfrog by Admiral William H. McRaven. We discuss leadership and personal development on this podcast if you are a first-time listener. And what we do is we pick apart books, we do interviews, we maybe have one-off topics that will help us. But tonight we are going over The Wisdom of the Bullfrog book. Again, small chapters, easy to read. But I'll tell you, like I told our Instagram stories, our Facebook stories, and our YouTube earlier, is that if we don't do anything with what we learn, then there's no reason to be listening to this. There's no reason to be, intentions are great. Having great ideas are great, but if they're not followed through, then that's on us, and we need to keep moving. So if you're not growing, I believe that you're moving backwards, and there's a saying that says if you're not growing, you're dying. So let's make sure that we are not dying, that we'll continue to grow, and that we help those around us. And like I said earlier, we're going over chapters 3 through 6, and we don't read the entire book on the podcast. There's gonna be parts that I read here tonight, or today, and I just want you to keep that in mind. Also, we have some great podcast notes in your podcast details of this podcast, wherever you're listening, so that you can see what the chapters are called, where you can pick up the book, and things like that. So make sure you check those out. So, Wisdom of the Bullfrog, chapters 3 through 6. Here we go, episode 126. Chapter 3 is called When in Command. So on June 4th, 1942, this could have possibly changed the future of what we know right now. If not handled or led correctly, the freedom that we have now, the history that we have, could change on that day. One man had to make a decision, and a man that was in command had to command. And that's where this idea comes from. So as a leader, if you're leading, then lead. So the chapter's called When in Command. This day is such a vital day because it's the Battle of Midway. That's when it began. The Battle of Midway was the single most decisive naval battle of the war that turned the tide in the Pacific. All this happened as a response of what happened at Pearl Harbor. If you don't know, go check it out. But let's think for a second. Can you imagine that being the man or woman, the leader, whatever, in charge, and this had to be your response? Like, you had to respond to what a different country did to you, and your entire country is waiting on your response as a leader. Yeah, I know the president is involved, but you as the commander had to make a choice. The commanding officer that day was down with shingles, and the second in command had to make the call. And Japan had a plan to ambush us. And as we were responding, we intercepted some of their intel, and all the decision hung in balance, and it was in one man's choice to go to Midway and again turn over the war in the Pacific. So there are all kinds of ideas and advice given, but ultimately it was the leader's choice, the commander's choice, and it was Chester Nimitz. If you've never read this story, if you don't know about him, go check that out. As a country, we're so thankful that he looked past his fears and led. He had to take into account the lives that were going to be lost. There were vessels lost, but he knew that he had to command because he was in command. So as a leader, you're a leader for a reason. So you have to lead. You have to get over the fact that there's going to be fear. And I know that's tough because for me, I tend to ask so many people's opinions at times, but I'm having to begin to have better confidence in myself to understand that I'm in a place where I'm a leader for a reason. I didn't put myself there. There's people that have shared vision, understanding, and wisdom with me to go, hey, I want you to do this. So I need to, yes, consult other people, but ultimately it's my decision, and I need to, when I'm in command, I need to command, I need to move. So if we stop there, I want us to ask ourselves, is there any area in our lives that we're not commanding, but you are in command? Is there an area that we're gathering so much information, but not leaping or taking that jump? You have all the information, but you just aren't taking the jump, and people are waiting on you, or maybe you're waiting on yourself, or maybe your family or your loved ones. Is there an area in your life like that? Is there a life decision? Is there a career decision? In the end, the decision will affect the people around you, but you as the leader must make the choice to command when you're in command. So what is stopping you from moving? What is stopping you from commanding? We have to, as a leader, remember that when in command, command. And I'm not saying you need to tell people what to do, and with tact, you need to have tact in place, right? But what I'm saying is the actual action of making decisions as a leader needs to be made. Because if not, then again, we're paralyzed. We don't make decisions. People are affected. People are waiting on us. And it's the same way with making a decision and being decisive. So here are a couple quotes from this chapter that I want us to hear. I think they're legit. I think there's some things that stand out that I want to share with you. I don't read the entire book on the podcast, like I said, but I'd love to read a couple of paragraphs. The first one says this: never forget that as a commander, you'll be expected to lead. If you're chosen for the job, take it with some humility, but also accept the fact that you're good, or you wouldn't be commanding. The key word there, again, is humility and confidence for me. I want us to remember what I just said. It's with tactfulness. It's with great responsibility that you're in command of your team, your organization, your company, your family, whatever it is, as a single mom, as a single dad, whatever it is, you're in command and you need to command. You need to maybe take some time to look at the decisions that need to be made, prioritize them, and then just begin to make them. I think if I think too much, if I wait too long, I'm looking at a to-do list that's a mile long, and I'm thinking, why haven't I moved on this? Well, because I'm leading my life, but I'm not doing it because I'm just sitting there looking at everything that needs to be done. I need to command. I need to make the move. There's this page 32. I want to read this. It says, being a leader is an awesome responsibility. There are days when it can be frightening to know that the fate of the organization rests on your shoulders, but you must also realize that you were chosen to be the leader because you have proven yourself along the way. You've demonstrated that you know the business. You've shown that you can handle the pressure and be decisive. You have exhibited all the qualities necessary to lead, and even if none of the above holds true, now you are the leader. You are in command, so take the damn helm and command. And he's just telling us there, you're where you're at in the position of your life where you're at. If you're at the bottom, like one of the greatest things you can remember is there's no way up, nowhere to go but up. If you're a leader of an organization and today you just inherited this role, guess what? You can get to know your team, but you're going to have to be making decisions. Humility is key. Confidence is key. But we got to remember that we have to command. Now, I know that life can bring choices and decisions that we have to make, right? But being paralyzed by them can also have this enormous ramification and consequences in our lives. and those around us, like I said earlier, the same by actually making the decision. In my life, I know that I communicate with the people that it may affect first, and I'm like, hey, there's something coming up that I need to make a decision on, and I think I'm ready to make the decision, but I need to let you know ahead of time this is going to affect our relationship, our business, our time. There may be a season where I'm out for a little bit. So you communicate what's going to happen when you make this choice. You weigh the pros and cons before you do these things. And then you decide with the what if factor, right? What if it works? What if, and you just go down the list of, hey, you know what? There's this new position and I think I want to go after it. Well, what if it works? What if you go after it and it freaking is amazing for the company and it turns a new page for the company? And then there's some of us that I believe I was in this stage for the longest time is what if it doesn't work? What if I don't get paid enough? What if I fall flat on my face? What if, all the what ifs, right? But here's the thing is the whole what if scenario for me is what if I never try and I have regrets at the end of life? There's not going to be something that I don't want to try that I know is in my decision to act or choice to move. And I know that I need to move in that area because I don't want to have regrets at the end of life. I want to play that what if question in my head at the end of life to go, hey, I need to make this choice now because at the end of life, what if I didn't take it and it changes the course of history, like this guy, Chester Nimitz. So the whole what if question for me is huge because I get to say, hey, you know what if I don't try this and at the end of life, this could have been a vital point in my life. And what if you try and you fail? Guess what? Have a plan B, have a backup plan, actually plan and learn from your mistakes. But the fact that you are going to learn and go down trying, I'd rather do that than not try. So at the end of each chapter, he has this thing called, it's simple. So here we go. It's simple. Number one, be confident. You were given the job because you have the talent and experience. Trust your instincts. Number two, be decisive. Don't take too much counsel of your fears. Be thoughtful, but not paralyzed by indecision. That's key. Number three, be passionate. Show your employees you care about them and about the mission. So you got to make sure your team knows what's going on, and you got to let them know, hey, I do care about you. I love you. And here's the responsibility that I have, and I'm gonna lead us because when I'm in command, I have to command. So that's chapter 3. Great chapter. When in command. Chapter 4. Here we go. We all have our frog floats. I thought this was a really good one because and again, we'll talk about it here in a second, but I think we all have our frog floats, and you'll understand that. But I think we all have these moments in our life that if it wouldn't have happened, we wouldn't be who we are. And it's probably a time in our lives where we said, hey, that's somewhat simple and it could be overlooked, but it was a vital part of my life. So we all know that Navy SEALs are some of the most amazing elite trained athletes. They go through some of the most amazing elite training in the world. And they have to do that. They do some amazing, cool things as well once they get their trident. And it comes at a cost though, right? Some of them quit, some of them don't ever become a Navy SEAL, but the ones that do, it comes at a cost of their time, their training, injuries, but they get to do some amazing things. Some of them are, again, just some of the most amazing men that have some of the most amazing stories ever told. They get some of the best training ever created. And with that said, McRaven opens up this chapter discussing some training op that he's on and what they're doing in the ocean. And it's a pretty cool thing. You got to pick up the book to read it. But he gets called in to see the commanding officer in charge. So he's out in training. Someone says, hey, they want to see you. So he gets ready, heads in. McRaven begins to sort through all kinds of things in his head. It's like you and I, maybe being called in by our parents, our boss, not even knowing. So you go through your head and you go, hey, what did I do wrong? Is there something I did wrong? Maybe I'm doing something right. So you play all those things in your head, right? So as a leader, remember that when you ask someone to sit down and talk, remember what's going through their minds. Make sure you put yourself in their shoes. So McRaven goes in, he begins to sort through all kinds of things in his head. Am I in trouble? Maybe I'm showing that I'm doing amazing. Maybe I'm being called to some secret, dangerous mission or operation. And so I want to go to page 40 in the book, and I want to read actually what happens. So he goes in, and he says this. It says here's his commanding officer. He says every year the city of Coronado holds a 4th of July parade. We haven't participated in a long while, he said. And McCraven said, okay, I'm confused. Must be something I'm missing. And here's his commanding officer. So this year, the Commodore wants to have a frog float, and I need you to take charge of building the float. He smiled. A frog float, I asked. Yes. You know, a bring green Freddy the Frog, puffing on a cigar, carrying a stick of dynamite. The folks in Coronado will love it. Yes, sir, I responded, with a lot less enthusiasm. He said, well, check with your supply officer. He can get you all your material you need for the float. That's all, Mr. McCraven. Thanks very much. So what's interesting is he thinks that he's going on a secret operation. He thinks that it's going to be great because he's a Navy SEAL, and he gets called in to do a frog float. What about you? I mean, here's this Navy SEAL, one of the most elite men that's gone through a lot of training, and he's asked to create a freaking float for a parade. I think for me, I just want to remind us as leaders, I want to ask us, have you ever had that feeling? Have you ever been asked to do something where you feel like something's below you? And I think you got to keep your ego in check enough to go, you know what? I can't say that this is below me, because what happens is that builds entitlement. And once as a leader, you've built entitlement, you've separated yourself from your people. They become a number to you. They become a statistic to you. I believe that Simon Sinek calls it abstraction. They become an abstraction where your choices, because you're entitled, affect them, and you don't care. So once you become entitled because of your position, and we become entitled because of our position, we forget about the people. Well, this brought McCraven down to earth pretty quick, being a Navy SEAL. And so he just was asked to do a frog float. And I keep thinking through our life and going, what is it in our lives where maybe we showed up for something bigger and it was just something simple. And in our lives, I remember being a student pastor, and we were going on a mission trip with, I'd say about, 27 people. 18 of them were teenagers between the ages of 15 and 18. And we were going to Costa Rica. We were wanting to help people. We were wanting to build a home. We were ready to build a home. We were ready to build a home for maybe a family in need because of an earthquake that had, taken out so many of the homes. And man, we were so stoked. And we got there and it started raining, and they gave us some paint buckets, and they said, we need you to paint this room. We need you to paint the outside of this building. And it was raining. And I don't know if you've ever painted in rain, but it doesn't work. But they asked us to paint the inside of this room, the outside of it, the ceiling, the roof, all of this stuff they asked us to do. And we were so disappointed, because what I said is, it's just paint. We were like, what the heck is going on? We came to help a family, but now you're asking us just to paint? Well, what we didn't know was, after we left, we had to change our attitude. We had to check our attitude. We left, came back to the States, and what we didn't realize was that home, that building was going to be for senior citizens that maybe didn't get to interact with people anymore. They were taken there. They got to play games, board games. They were cared for. They had checkups. They got to go there and hang out throughout days of the week to be cared for and loved on. And when we found that out, I had to remind myself, it was not just paint. It's not just paint. We served people by completing a task that we had no idea what it was going to do. But if you are above that and you do it with a bad attitude, when that puts you in check, you begin to go, oh, maybe I should have done it with a better attitude. And, we've all heard those stories where a builder asks somebody, or a builder gets approached by somebody, and they say, hey, I want you to build this house, and here's a budget. And so the guy built it cheap. Well, then the guy that was asking to build the home gives it over to the builder, and the builder's like, hey, I didn't realize it was for me. Yeah, it's yours. I want to give it to you as a gift. Well, he built it cheap because he thought it was below him. And for us as leaders, we cannot forget that when we're asked to build a frog float, that we don't do it to the best of our ability. So here's the cool part. We go back to the book. He goes back to his locker. He sits and he slouches, and one of his mentors comes in and tells him, hey, he tells him something that I want us to read. Check this out now, and let it be a reminder in our lives and individuals as leaders and mentors. Let this be a reminder. He says this. Let me tell you something, Ensign. I've been in this canoe club for almost 30 years. Sooner or later, we all have to do things we don't want to do. But if you're going to do it, then do it right. Build the best damn frog float you can. And we have to stop there. Once more, we have to remember as we lead people to remind them about being the best they can be, that we can be as a team. But then also, when your team and you're the leader gets asked to do something, we must remind ourselves that we can do one thing. We are in control of the output, the attitude, the commitment level. We have to give our best selves. People are watching us, and that's one thing a leader cannot forget, is that you are being watched. We are being watched by our people. So do you sweep? Do you pick up the trash? Do you throw the trash? Do you mop? Do you put the chairs out? Do you sit and listen to someone else? Rather than you talking, do you sit and listen? Again, as leaders, we must think that nothing is above us or below us, and we are not above other people or anyone else or anything. We have to remember that we have to give our best attitude, best effort, best support to everything, because at some point we're going to be asked to build a frog float, and we have to say, hey, I'm going to give my best, your absolute best. So chapter 4 was called We All Have Our Frog Floats, and here is the simple part on page 43. He calls it simple. Number 1, be humble in your demeanor and your expectations. Number 2, well, let's stop right there, man. Expectations. You come into a meeting thinking something, and when it's not what we expect, how's our demeanor? Are we slouching? Are we upset? Again, change your attitude, be the best, and say, hey, I'm going to do this. Even internally, even as internal, you're maybe upset and struggling with the ask that they're asking you. Put out the best composure, and maybe challenge your attitude to change. Number 2, accept the fact that you will always be asked to do jobs that are beneath you and your status. Do them to the best of your ability. Number 3, measure the strength of your employees by their willingness to do the little tasks and do them well. So listen to that. Measure your team's success. Measure your team's morale by the little tasks that they do. And when you ask them to do they do them with a great attitude? Do they do them to the best of their ability? If not, ask yourself, what is it that I haven't showed them? What is it that maybe, am I too separated from them? And when that frog float comes, do you guys do it as a team, or are you having to pull them along the way? And what are you doing? What part of the team are you on? So that was number 3. Chapter 4, we all have our frog floats. Chapter 5, the only easy day was yesterday. The only easy day was yesterday. The phrase was established in the SEAL teams in 1989. It was printed on the back of a shirt of the graduating SEAL class. And they would say it, if you think the hard part is over, you're mistaken. Tomorrow will be just as difficult as today, or maybe, let me reread that. They had this t-shirt and it was said that they would say this: if you think the hard part is over, you're mistaken. Tomorrow will be just as difficult as today, maybe more so. So the only easy day was yesterday. And that SEAL class in 1989, they made that their motto, is that the only easy day was yesterday. And this is a reminder to leaders and individuals to bring it every single day, to make sure that we are bringing it. And in this chapter, he tells us a little about a SEAL who died of throat cancer, and he too was a bullfrog for a time. He did not allow throat cancer to slow him down. He continued to give speeches and work as a bullfrog. I mean, he gave it all, his all. And then that former SEAL that passed away with throat cancer inspired McRaven to continue his career through a parachute accident that he had. And then one day while he was running, a younger SEAL lapped McRaven, and that young SEAL looked at McRaven and said, what are you doing out here? You don't have anything to prove. You have nothing to prove to anyone else. So why are you running with us? And then McRaven was upset, and I want you to listen to what he says in the book. So the only easy day was yesterday. Listen to McRaven's response to that young SEAL who passed him and said, why are you out here? You have nothing else to prove. The day you no longer believe you have something to prove, the day you no longer believe you must give it your all, the day you think you're entitled to special treatment, the day you think all your hard days are behind you, is the day that you are no longer the right leader for the job. Man, I read that and I thought, okay, that's pretty harsh, or that's pretty abrasive, or direct. But listen to it again. The day you no longer believe that you have something to prove, the day you no longer believe you must give it your all, the day you think you're entitled to special treatment, the day you think your hard days are behind you, is the day that you're no longer the right leader for the job. And remember, man, I have those days too, where maybe you're off at 3 or 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, whatever time. Maybe it's an hour before you're clocking out. Maybe it's a couple hours, and you begin to go, man, I'm gonna slack. I'm gonna relax. Or you start to think about the next day and how horrible it's gonna be. So you remove focus from today, and what does it do? You begin to dread the things. See, we have to stay focused, and we have to give it our all right there in that moment. And I want us to stop and talk about this. If you aren't in the place to hear this, it's easy to get defeated, because you'll take the perspective and start looking at tomorrow like I do, and never see a way out. You know what I'm saying? So if you're at a place where you go, man, I'm just tired all the time. I don't want to think about the only easy day was yesterday. If we're not at a place to hear that, then this will feel overwhelming. But we have to stop looking at tomorrow. We have to stop looking at our past. We have to look at the moment where we're at right now. And yes, we have jobs lined up, and yes, we have an agenda for tomorrow. But look at what you're given right now and focus on that, and just say, yesterday was easier than today, and I have to give it my all. So even though the only easy day was yesterday, we must still focus on today. Don't look back, don't look at tomorrow. Perspective is key, because if you clock out and you give it your all and you're exhausted and you begin to think about tomorrow, then sometimes we'll feel defeated. You know what I'm saying? That's what I do. There's times where I go, man, I have this big project and we did great. Today we killed it. And then I think about tomorrow, I'm like, son of a gun, I don't even want to go in. Or son of a gun, I don't even want to have this meeting or this conversation, because I'm already thinking about tomorrow. But I have to stay focused on today. Perspective is key to this whole statement of the only easy day was yesterday. So yes, the only easy day was yesterday, but we have to focus on what's at hand, right in front of us. Give it your all. Don't get ahead of yourself, and do not get stuck on yesterday. I do love the way that he wraps up this entire chapter. Let me turn to it. The last chapter, or the last paragraph of this book, or of this chapter, says this: but it doesn't mean that every day has to exhaust you. Being a great leader doesn't mean you have to have superhuman strength. It only means that you have to recognize that it will require effort every day, and some days you just won't bring it, and that's okay. That's normal. But then bring it the next day or the next. You will only fail as a leader when you think that today is going to be easier than yesterday. The only easy day was yesterday. So think about it. I know, again, I can struggle with giving 110% at work and forgetting about my other leadership roles elsewhere. And I say that because if I have 3 different things going on in my head and I give 110 to one, then the other 2 suffer. And then I start to think about that, and then I get down and I'm like, no, focus at what's on hand, right in front of me. Give everything that I have and stay focused on that. And when I get to the next thing, prioritize what needs to be done and give it 110, and then the next. So whether it's at home, work, or in relationships, if I overextend myself and have no margin, I will drain myself and I will get focused on work. I will get so focused on work that I can be too committed because I want to do things. And then if I'm overcommitted and I don't have any margin and I'm drained, then guess what? I can't pour out anything to any of those 3 opportunities that I have right in front of me. So focus on what's at hand. Don't overextend yourself, right? Don't say yes to a million things. That's on you. Focus on what's at hand. Give 110%. And just remember that the only easy day was yesterday. But just like you said, don't get so down on yourself if you don't bring it. Talk to yourself. Write some things down. Journal some things and say, hey, tomorrow I have to bring it. We have to remember, again, that there's a dichotomy here that yes, you can, the only easy day was yesterday, and you can get so focused on that that you're so depressed or down about today, and then that carries over into tomorrow and the next. There's a dichotomy, there's a balance of saying, you know what, yeah, yesterday happened, but now I got to focus on this, and I need to stick to what's at hand, and I give it 110%. And we don't need to use that as an excuse, but we need to use it as a boundary and a warning sign. Is I can't allow myself to be empty in life. If I overextend myself at work, then I don't have anything at home. If I overextend myself at home, then I don't want to go to work. You see, there's this balance, this dichotomy. And when we start talking about this, the only easy day was yesterday. So don't allow yourself to be emptied, but also when you are at work and you're given 110%, make sure that you stay focused on what's at hand and you give it your all, but that you know that when you get home, that that's a new mission, that's a new project, or not project, that's a new mission, that's a new area of where you can excel, and give 110 there as well. The last part of this chapter, it's simple. You must bring energy. Number one, you must bring energy and enthusiasm every single day. Number two, you're not entitled to anything but more hard work. The rank and file are working hard and getting paid less. Number three, attack each day as though it were critical to the organization's success. So regardless of what's going on, that number two is good. You're not entitled to anything but more hard work. The rank and file are working hard and getting paid less. You gotta remember, we're just being watched as leaders. We are constantly being watched. And if we get stuck on yesterday and the way it didn't go for us, or our business or a company, or maybe our relationships, if you get so focused on that, then you lose today, and then you do that tomorrow, and then you lose the same day in front of you, and all of a sudden we're depressed, we're depleted, and we can't move forward because we're so focused on what happened yesterday. Put in your mind that the only easy day was yesterday, and give today 110%. That's good stuff. That was chapter 5. The only easy day was yesterday. Chapter 6, final chapter, right? Chapter 6 says, run to the sound of the guns. It's always a challenge to do the podcast by myself because no one's talking to me, but I want you guys to know that these chapters are pretty amazing, short. Again, you need to go pick up this book. Chapter 6, run to the sound of guns. Great chapter. So before we get started with what he shares in this chapter, I want to ask a question to each one of us. Do you know the difference between an emergency and a crisis? Or something that's critical and something that needs your attention? I ask this because as leaders, I think not everything is a crisis, not everything is an emergency. If we don't know where our direct attention is needed, then we're going to run to every single problem. And guess what? Every single problem is going to be emergency. Every single problem is going to be a crisis. And if you're at every single problem and crisis, then who is watching the vision? Who's pouring into your team? Who has the vision of the company in front and is trying to drive that forward? Because if everything's on fire from your perspective, then and you have to put out every single fire, then who again is leading the company? Who is directing where we need to go? Can't always be an emergency, and it can't always be a crisis. Again, it goes back to what we just said in the last chapter. If everything's a crisis, if everything is an emergency, then guess who's going to be leading on empty at some point? You will. The team's not going to be able to handle things on their own because you're handling it. The team's not going to be able to overcome because you're trying to overcome. At some point, as a leader, we have to be someone who empowers, not micromanages. We have to be someone who encourages, not micromanages. We have to be someone who trusts and inspires, not command and controls. We have to be someone who can allow others to lead. Because when we don't allow others to lead as leaders, we become empty. And when we become empty, we can't lead anyone. And when we can't lead anyone, we feel as if we're a failure. But it all starts with us understanding that not everything's a crisis, not everything's an emergency. You got to give yourself some room to breathe and shoot the vision, and understand that other people on your team can help when things arise. So run to the sound of the guns. I have some more notes, and I think in our profession, in parenting and leadership, we must know again the difference between an emergency and a crisis. Some of these crises call for your attention, but some don't. And I think that if we can help the people below us understand what a leader does and how to think, then they can handle those problems when they arise. And guess what? They can just fill you in rather than call you into another meeting. So back to this chapter. We just talked about what I just said as far as emergency and crisis, because the chapter opens with a much needed vacation. McRaven is in Iraq or Afghanistan, and he's in Afghanistan, and he's going to meet his wife in Paris and his daughter. But then something happens the evening before he leaves, and it's going to require his attention. Some civilians were killed on the battlefield, and he knows he could still have gone, but he knew his leadership was needed. So he knew that there's some things that are going to happen that he can leave and go meet his wife in Paris. But when they came in and said, "Hey, sir, some civilians were killed and we need your help," and he had to stick back. He hadn't seen his family in about 7 months. And he knew that running to the sound of the gun meant, I have to go to these meetings and we're going to have to clean up a mess. This is why I want us as leaders to be careful running to what we think is a fire but is only smoke, right? I know that where there's smoke, there's fire, but what if the fire's already being put out and you just come to it and just fan it more to become more of a fire because it seems like an emergency to you, but your team has already put it out. So again, there is a balance between showing up and knowing when you have to be there and when you don't. So he had to stay because he had some people that had been killed. So back to the book, McRaven talks about the highly importance of a battle in history, and it was the Battle of Little Round Top. He talked about one of their leaders running towards the gunfire to stop the Confederate army from flanking the Union. So there's a battle going on, and the Confederate army is coming up and trying to flank the Union, and there was one guy that decided to run towards the enemy. He physically ran towards the enemy, and the outcome, again, just like that first chapter, could have changed the trajectory of history if that one man would have taken charge and said, "Hey, we have a gap, they're trying to flank us, and I have to go stop them." Put his bayonet on his gun and ran towards them. One man's decision to run towards the problem, to face it. He then covers one of the most massive oil spills in the Gulf and the lack of ownership by the owner's company. So here's there's two sides of the story here. One, this man changed history because he ran towards the enemy. On the other side, this man, the owner of a company, recently there was a big, massive oil spill in the Gulf, and he ran away from it. He didn't take ownership. He left his company behind, was making excuses. His lack of empathy and ownership cost him his job and the lives of several people. Again, two quotes that he ends the chapter with are right here. He says, "Why is there a reluctance to face the solution, to be the face of the solution?" Because you're going to be the face of the solution. It likely means you had a hand in the problem. Good leaders understand the organizations are going to have challenges. That's why you were hired to lead. Embrace the challenge. So let me read that again. Why is there reluctance to be the face of the solution? Because if you're going to be the face of the solution, it likely means you had a hand in the problem. Good leaders understand that organizations are going to have challenges. That's why you were hired to lead. Embrace the challenge. I have to remind myself of that daily at times, because I think that it's easy to see that when you're helping people, there's different things that come up, different fires, different emergencies, right? Or maybe different crises that come up, and you go, man, how many times I'm going to be called to a different crisis, or the same crisis in different people's lives, or different crises in the same person's life. And for me, I have to remind myself that, hey, this is what I was created to do, to encourage, to empower people to face those things. So I have to remind myself daily that, hey, this is why I'm hired. This is why I'm here to lead. And I have to embrace that challenge. I have to run towards the sound of gunfire for people in their lives. Here's another quote: "Running to the sound of guns is always risky, both personally and professionally. But hiding from the problem will only make it worse. Sometimes you just have to fix bayonets and charge into the breach. So he's talking about that gentleman at the beginning of the chapter. He just said, hey, fix your bayonets and let's go. And what he did was he ran towards the enemy. They were not going to be flanked, and it changed the trajectory of that battle and the trajectory of history. So then I got to ask us, what are things in our lives right now that we aren't running to the sound of gunfire, right? I think that there's things in our lives, there's challenges, just like the first chapter we covered, that we are maybe reluctant, maybe we're paralyzed, but if we don't run to the sound of that gunfire, maybe we're going to be flanked, maybe we're going to lose some sales, maybe we're going to lose a relationship, maybe we do need to have some urgency and we aren't moving. What is going to be the cost of that? I want you to write that down and go, what is the cost of myself not doing something about this? And I think at times, if we don't make that choice as leaders to run towards the sound of gunfire, then the next time it happens, and the next, it becomes easier and easier to maybe ignore the gunfire. And then it becomes easier to say, oh, I didn't hear it. And then it becomes easier to say, hey, what gunfire? And the people around you are looking for you to lead, but you go, hey, what problem? No, I didn't see that. And then we begin to make excuses for ourselves. And when we don't show up as leaders and we make excuses, what happens? Our team fails. They're looking out after themselves. They don't have the best interests of the organization or company. They only look out after themselves because that's what they see the leader doing. We must run towards the sound of gunfire, like he's saying here. Do the small things right and take care of the team. Be a part of the solution. Don't be a part of the problem. But being a part of the solution, own up to your maybe area of the problem that you had a role in. Here's it simple. He said it's simple. Number one, be aggressive. When you see a problem, do something about it. That is what is expected of leaders. Number two, move to a place where you can be the best, where you can best assess the nature of the problem and provide guidance and resources to resolve as quickly as possible. Number three, big one right here. Listen, communicate your intent every step of the way. And I believe as leaders, if we forget to communicate our intent, it can mess with the team. It can mess with the morale. We can forget to involve people. And when people don't feel involved or they're not communicated to, it catches them off guard. So what happens when someone catches us off guard, right, as leaders, or someone plans something and they forget to communicate to us? We're surprised. It throws things off. We had a plan, we had a schedule, things are out of order. So when we make decisions and we're running towards the sound of gunfire, we must remember to communicate with our team. I think over time, we think that our team is going to forgive us, but the more times they keep hearing, oh, I forgot to tell you, or I forgot to tell you, I forgot to tell you, or I forgot to do this, your pocket change with them, your credibility is out the window, and all they're asking for is a simple communication with their leader to go, hey, this is coming down the pipe, I need you to be ready for it. Or hey, we're making this pivot, here's how it's going to affect you, and here's why we're making this pivot. Do you think you can handle this? But you're the one making the call. You need to tell them your intent and communicate it. So that is chapter 6, Run to the Sound of the Guns. Man, that's some good stuff. The Wisdom of the Bullfrog by William H. McRaven. Admiral William H. McRaven. Again, it's simple, so simple, but it's not easy. We have to remember that leadership is going to take action. So whether it's running to the sound of gunfire, whether it's remembering that the only easy day was yesterday, remembering that we're all going to have our frog floats, or when we're in command that we just need a command. Those are simple little key statements that he's making that should remind us to be better leaders, to take action, to remember that nothing is below us, and we should not be entitled. I think there's a lot of challenges in today's episode, because whether it's, like I said, whether it's something that you have to do because you're in charge, just do it. When you're in command, command. And I think the biggest one for me is remembering that we all have our frog floats. There's all these, there's going to be meetings you got to go to that you just have to be at. Or there's going to be a job that you need to do, so just do it. And it goes along with the other two, to making sure that you run to the sound of the gun, and that the only easy day was yesterday. Because if you're dreading so much doing a frog float, then guess what? It's never going to get done, and you're not being the leader that needs to take the initiative to move forward. I'm looking forward to next week's already. The book is a great book. Make sure you pick it up. Like I said, you can hit the highlights button on our Instagram. Go to the book. You can purchase it there. Anytime you purchase a book from our links, you help support the podcast. But guys, that's it. I think that we got to continue to develop ourselves as leaders so that, again, we can pour into the lives of other people and we can be a leader worth following. I said this a while back, that if we cannot self-lead, if we can't lead ourselves, then how do we expect to lead others, or why would we expect other people to follow us if we cannot lead ourselves? We need to be putting in the work. We need to be growing. We need to be reading. We need to make sure that we're developing ourselves. So as we lead the company, as we lead the team, maybe it's a team of 2, maybe it's a team of 200. If they see us doing the things that we're asking them to do, again, your credibility is there, the ownership's there, and you're showing them that you expect from them what you're doing as well, and that you can lead yourself. So when you can lead yourself, you can lead others. I appreciate you guys listening. I appreciate you guys putting up with me being solo on here. Next week, episode 127, we'll dive into the next few chapters of The Wisdom of the Bullfrog. Thanks for all your support. This month of July was great for our podcast stats. I just ask that you share with us what your favorite part was. But in other news, looking forward to the second gathering on July 13th. And the mid-month debrief is going to be coming out, so look out for that on wherever you listen to your podcast. But thanks for listening. Thank you guys for support. I love you guys. I appreciate all the, again, encouragement that you guys are throughout the week. And remember, we exist for more. We're here to offer more. Don't ever give up. Every single one of us is made for more. Later, guys. YouTube, appreciate you guys listening. Sorry that was a little long, but I appreciate y'all being here. We'll talk to you guys later. See you.